Well, welcome to everyone listening in on today's call. I've got to say I'm really excited and pretty thrilled to be introducing this next guest interviewee to you all. It's a gentleman by the name of Linton V. Harris, who is the CEO of the Sudden Impact Entertainment Company, a global company who I'm actually going to pass on to Linton in a moment, just to explain more about, because no doubt he'll give you a much better idea of what it is they do, and my introduction won't be anywhere near worthy enough, I'm sure. So welcome to the call, Linton.
Thanks very much, Dean. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. Really looking forward to it. Look, just as a brief biography for everyone listening in, Linton was born and raised in Adelaide in South Australia, and moved to Sydney in his early days as a marketer, and was actually at the forefront of something pretty revolutionary in Australian sport, playing a pivotal role in bringing the Sydney Swans, a prominent Australian rules football team, into the world of private ownership. And for many people, while that would be a highlight of their career, it merely served as a stepping stone for Linton, who then made his next step international, moving to New York City in the USA, where the idea for the Sudden Impact Entertainment Company grew on the back of a pretty amazing vision, and that's what we're going to talk about at the beginning of tonight's call. So without further ado, Linton, if I could pass on to you, perhaps you can just give our listeners a rundown on how this all came about.
Yeah, well, the move, Dean, from I guess particularly from Australia to the US was obviously what was the major move. I had a love affair with New York, I think, since I was about 18 or 19, or America when I first went there. I had a couple of scholarships with the YMCA. I worked in the US as a program director, and I just fell in love with it. Anyway, and then I guess I was around 31, 32, and I decided in Sydney, after some success internationally with some radio awards, that I had, I guess, the creative chops to have a crack. And I had an idea for a show in New York in particular, to do a Halloween show based on the globally known success of the Radio City Christmas show, the Radio City Music Hall in New York. And I said to my only friend in New York on a trip, I said, someone should do a Halloween show, that'd be kind of fun. And he said, him and his wife said that was a great idea. So based on the strength of that, I quit my job in Sydney as the marketing director of 8 radio stations, quit the balcony at Bondi, went to the opening of a door back then, and life was pretty good. And then said, what the heck, let's have a crack. So, I packed up, left Australia on Valentine's Day 1993, and being an optimist, thought I would open in New York that October, which gave me a robust 6 months or so. Mm-hmm. And of course, it took a little bit longer of knocking on doors, and in my first 2 years living in Spanish Harlem, and from Bondi to Spanish Harlem was it was quite the move. And then we opened, I guess, after many door knocks. I opened in New York at Madison Square Garden in October of '96, and went on to play there for 4 years. And that became a Harvard case study, and it really opened the way forward to the last 20-year adventure in America, and then globally. And I, since during that journey, became a U.S. citizen as well as Australian. And my love affair was sort of fully realised.
Yeah, it's a remarkable journey there in itself, isn't it? To think that in many cases that 20 years has passed, and that one idea can prove to be such a catalyst for everything else that's happened on the back of that. Because Madison Square Garden, if I remember correctly, sold nearly 250,000 tickets.
Correct.
Was that in 1 year, or was that over the course?
In the course of the 4 seasons that it ran, it sold over 250,000 tickets, and it put me in some pretty rare company, I've got to say, which I didn't realise until later. But in terms of the amount of people and artists that have sold 250,000 tickets at Madison Square Garden is a pretty small group, and so that was a breakthrough idea, if you will. and a disruptive idea that to this day obviously is a highlight, and one that, yeah, set me about and set us about on a journey that you didn't really predict. It's on the strength of one idea, which frankly most things are. Most entrepreneurs have a singular focus, and for me the company was secondarily. There's some people that go into business because they just love business. I'm in business because I love the idea, and hopefully good business follows. And there really is a difference. So.
And I think that's really, really key. I love what you just said there, because it's almost finding a deeper purpose in what you do. And for you, I think I recall on the business card the tagline of the business is Mercator di Somnium, the merchant of dreams. And I remember when we first met, walking away thinking that's exactly what the business is. It's bringing dreams. It's really peddling dreams around the globe and making reality. And that really comes with that power of a vision, being able to see, in your mind, you'll be able to see this show created before it was even reality.
Well, and therein lies the difficulty. Anyone with vision is always up against a hard road, because you can see it clearly and no one else can. So, therein lies the beginning of the journey. And I like to always sort of say that it starts for me on the napkin, and the napkin theory that, I give birth to stuff on napkins with a pen and paper, and then, I can see it. And the challenge with any idea, of course, is to then get someone else to see it. And it can be very frustrating, because if you have any sort of vision, you can see it absolutely bloody clearly, and of course no one else can. So it is quite funny in one respect.
Yeah. So touching on that, because that is a really important point, and I'm sure people listening would go, well, how do you do that? What have been your strategies, I guess, or what have been the ways that you've been able to employ in order to get people to buy into that vision? Because that's really what it's about, isn't it? Getting others to buy into the vision.
Yeah, for me, it normally is, I'll write it. In entertainment, it normally starts with a written word. So you kind of write something and have a vision for what it is, and then my sort of strategy almost forever has been a very simple strategy of getting a drawing done. And I can't draw. I mean, I'll draw a napkin and or write the idea out and say, all right, this is the idea, then sort of sketch out something, then give it to someone to draw. And frankly, most of my ideas have started that way. Then I'll get a really good drawing done if it's a visual thing. And then because again, visual, obviously related, so, all right, if I need someone else to see what's in my head, then I need to get it out of my head, put it on paper, and then have it illustrated in a form or displayed in a form, whether that be written or artistically, so someone else can see it. And and for most of my ideas, frankly, I've raised the idea or brought it to life on the strength of one drawing. Most of the time, which is quite funny. Some of the stuff takes a lot more work, obviously, behind it. And even Madison Square Garden, there was a tremendous amount of research that I'd done on the Halloween / industry in America at the time. But ultimately, I had to transform space, which in the case of New York at the Madison Square Garden was 45,000 square feet, and show them, well, what could this become? And once you kind of show other people what it can become, then people get excited, then they buy in, then they feel like they're part of the journey.
Yeah, I guess it's really, at the heart of it is that famous quote, a picture tells 1,000 words, and given that, humans are such visual creatures, it's something, because in many cases, once you bring that colour to life, the sounds, the feelings start to come with it, and then, as you said, you can recruit people into starting to make that happen. That you talk about ideas, and I guess the thing that strikes me is that it's, and from the initial conversation we had, for people listening, again, it shouldn't be. I think no one should be confusing this with the thought that this was the first idea that you had. your background before it was a highly successful marketing executive as well. So this was something that was always a driving force for you, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, and it was well documented. You know, it became a Harvard case study, which in itself is, you know, its own great sort of bouquet in the journey. You know, to become a Harvard case study was really quite honourable. But it was really a hallmark from my childhood, you know, at summer camp and creating ideas and creating experiences for kids. But I remember a reporter in New York, Australian reporter, this pretty much sums it up because it's well documented, but this story for me sums it up for your listeners, which is anyone that's in Australia in particular. An Australian reporter was walking with me at Madison Square Garden one night, and I can't remember what year it was, but we were walking down and he said, "Mate, you know, it's just fantastic. You know, you're Madison Square Garden. How do you feel?" And I said, "Mate, it's just like doing a show at the surf club. It's just a bigger hall. You know, you know, it really is that kind of mentality. I mean, I remember putting on I think the band was called the Bodgies and the Wedgies at Moana Surf Club, and then I put on Jojo Zepp and the Falcons, and we made $400, and I was about 16. And so I always had that mentality, and then I worked in television, you know, became a DJ, did a lot of sort of stuff that was self-starting, but yeah, I mean, I've never taken it any more serious than that, in that, hey, it's an idea, this will be fun, you know, let's have a crack, you know, I mean, you're here for a short time, you know, it's kind of like, you know, what's the word? And my dad was alive when I was in New York, but he never got there, and I used to say to him, because he'd be worried, he'd say, you know, why the hell did you give up a job you know, a fantastic job in Australia? I said, well, you know, it's like a game of cricket, Dad, you know. I said, you know, as long as I'm at the crease and they don't hit my wicket, I'll get there. You know, eventually I'll get to 100. And no one got me out, ultimately. You know, that's really the bottom line. I kept knocking on doors until someone said yes, versus exposing my wicket to get out.
Yeah. Do you think that's one of the things that kept you going, though, was being able to, because you had such a compelling vision of what the event Madison Square Garden could be. I mean, I'm sure that there was you know, a lot of those knocks on doors either weren't answered or were answered with a firm no, or in some cases were answered with a, well, mate, you've got to be stark raving mad. Was it because you were so committed to making that a reality that it gave you a lot of drive and determination to keep going?
Well, singular focus, yeah, was very important. But the other thing I think I made early on, and I remember this very vividly, you know, when I arrived in New York, it wasn't like I was going back. You know, like I remember going to the Australian Club very early days, and people would say, you know, they'd whinge or whatever, complain about something American. I'd say, well, mate, if you don't like it, you know, piss off, go back home. You know, I said, I'm here to stay. And, you know, and I guess it's kind of like anyone that has a crack, you know, if you stay there long enough, because people used to think I was on vacation. You know, you go into a meeting and I had a very much, obviously, a deeper Australian accent back then, and people would think you're on vacation. They'd say, when are you going home? And I'd say, no, I live here. And I think that's part of the, you know, part of the journey. And even I remember coming home one night at Spanish Harlem, and another day of pictures and no's, and you know, good. That's a great idea, but no money. And I think it was a homeless guy on the street was asking me for money, and I said, "Oh, nick off, mate. I live here too." You know, it's like, you know, I was living on the same block. You know, so it was like, yeah, you just gotta. I think you believe in it, and ultimately you get a champion. You know, in my case at Madison Square Garden, you know, I met a guy eventually, John Urban, who became the project champion and believed my vision and was able to get it across the line internally there. So, you know.
So I'm thinking of that because I think that's a beautiful thing as well. Is that once you get, if you believe in it enough, it starts to. I think other people people do begin to believe in that, and the energy doubles, the enthusiasm doubles, and you start to build some real momentum. And yet, still along the way, I would imagine there were still plenty of hurdles and challenges to be to be overcome in the process of setting up that first season in '96. What can you tell us a little bit about how you handled that? I guess those moments in the journey.
Yeah, well, one is the journey before someone said yes, which, I'm a curious being, so, and I was broke, so I literally enjoyed the journey of walking everywhere. I mean, there was literally weeks and days where, I'd have enough money to get a subway uptown and I'd have to walk home. So, and then so you'd look at architecture, versus speeding by in a cab or going underground in a subway. I saw a lot of architecture. I saw a lot of New York. I walked a lot in New York, and then eventually and then there's the second part of that, which is when they said yes, and Branson says something like, just say yes and then figure it out later, which is basically what we did. I mean, you kind of said, well, oh, jeez, they said yes. Oh, now what do we do? All right, well, we got to create it. And, the Etch-a-Sketch model has to come to life. And, in the first year, frankly, the very first night of Madison Square Garden, we got a lot right, we got a lot wrong. We had lines around the block and, the set looked amazing, but we didn't know, and because we created a linear show like Promenade Theatre where the audience moves, it was a real schmozzle, quite frankly. And that first year, and I had a mutiny from the actors on the first night, and blah blah blah. Anyway, we got through it, thank God. But the research at the end was quite fascinating, where the audience thought it was such a good idea that they forgave us. They said, "We'll forgive you for making those mistakes. Don't make them again. But we'll forgive you because it's a really cool idea." So that was really interesting, and so yeah, there's even when you get up, and then Madison Square Garden lasted 4 years. It had it couldn't outrun the union costs in New York, which is a shame, and not indifferent, I would say, to, let's say, the automobile industry in Australia now, for example, where it's an industry that's doing it tough. Manufacturing's doing it tough. Well, New York and Madison Square Garden, was a building designed and an environment designed that was very challenging economically, and so. But we had 4 great seasons of growth and really just blew open the door to the future. So it's been great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you touch on a really, really important point there as well. Is that to anyone, again, thinking that you have an idea and you pull it off the first time and everything goes perfectly well, and the champagne corks are popping and everyone's happy. There's streamers everywhere. It's not really the reality, is it? There's even problems in there. Certain things that you don't anticipate or can't plan for still occur. And yet, if you stay true to the ultimate vision that you've got, then you're prepared to wear that. Many people are more forgiving of the fact that, well, you're trying to do something pretty special, and will provide the opportunity to get to the end of it, review what's worked, review what hasn't worked, refocus, and then reset your expectations for the following year. And it sounds pretty much that's exactly what happened after the first season at Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, and then we were on a pretty special journey, from that moment. Still with many challenges and some that we could never, get in front of, but. It was a success and on many levels, and looked back upon fondly by so many people. And, you know, it was just one of those things. It was a special time. It's kind of like, you know, you have your moments in the sun on different things, have their time and place, and that was it. And we broke a lot of ground that was, you know, to this day still we implement and people talk about and copy and have taken further. But people do forgive you, and I think that if you make mistakes, if you are not trying to rip them off and you're not trying to, you know, sell them snake oil, if you're, in fact, if they see that you're diligent and they see that you're, you know, trying to be true to them, then, you know, away you go. Now, entertainment, of course, you know, is a fickle business and a really interesting business because you're always starting from scratch, essentially. You know, so what someone thinks is a great piece of art or a great movie or a great piece of theatre, someone else thinks sucks. You know, so it's a really interesting environment. And I remember when I studied at Harvard, you know, one of my professors used to call, you know, products widgets, and a lot of my classmates, you know, were in widget businesses. And I was in a business where I was always having to reinvent the widget. So, you know, so you're only as good as your next show or your last show, whatever, you know. So, you know, you just don't always hit it out of the park. Sometimes you do.
Yeah, and again, I think it's a really valuable lesson in that an individual, you know, obviously yourself in this case, sets a vision of something that they want to create, and it's never about pleasing everyone, isn't it? And that's a wholly unrealistic expectation to take into it. You're just trying to make it the best experience for people as possible. Some will love it, some may not, but you carry on regardless, don't you? And particularly when, in this case, as you've said, and I think it's more subtle there, is that when the manner is positive, the intentions are good, then the experience for the masses is a good one.
Yeah, and you know, that comes out of just, you know, sensibilities. And I think even in the days when I lived in Sydney, one of my mentor, who I recently had dinner with, frankly, Bob Pritchard, who was Edelston's right-hand man in the private ownership, and that I was fortunate enough to be in that opening team. You know, Bob, you know, we were selling Australian rules football back then in a rugby league state, and no one wanted to know us. You know, and you just made calls and no one gave a toss. But we just believed in it, and we made it exciting at the time, and got people interested, and because, you know, I played Aussie rules, so I believed in it, and that's why I ultimately, you know, I was part of that original team. That, you know, you sometimes just got to battle against it, and then, you know, then there was a bunch of lean years, if I recall. You know, I was already in America, but you know, the Swans still had their challenges, and in the last few years they really have, you know, taken that 30-year journey or whatever it is, and really been now one of the benchmark clubs of the AFL. So, you know, I have this saying that I use quite often for myself and my own motivation, which is, you know, you don't have to win every game to win the Super Bowl, and you know, you can lose a bunch of games along the way. Which, you know, you can lose a pitch meeting or you know, whatever you're trying to sell, and then you can still have a win at the end of it, depending on what your vision is and what your criteria is for the win. But you know, rarely does a team go through undefeated. Rarely. I mean, that is rare.
Yeah, absolutely, and in many ways, what I'm keen to find out. We're moving to now is very much that parallel between the first show, which obviously was an outstanding success in so many ways, as you've said, but it didn't stop there. That was, again, while that was a great achievement and one that you look back on very fondly, it built a foundation or a launching pad for what was to come, and I guess that's very reflective of the story you were talking about there of the Sydney Swans, because you've gone on to create some pretty amazing live events, for well-known movie launches. The one that I remember quite distinctly, which is how I recognised you when we crossed paths nearly 4 years ago, was the Terminator 2 experience at the Royal Adelaide Show. So perhaps if you could expand on what have been some of the other big Hollywood blockbusters or franchises that people may be familiar with, that's also had a hand in it from yourself.
Well, what happened was that in the last year Madison Square Garden, I did a deal with Universal, and I created the Mummy Live as one of our attractions at Madison Square Garden, and it used to frustrate me that we'd have this, enormously popular production sitting in storage for 11 months of the year, and it frustrated me because, one, it was, and not a negative use of asset, but certainly wasn't maximizing the use of the asset, because what I discovered with Madison Square Garden was that I viewed it as an entertainment premise. I was never a horror guy, still not, and which amuses many people, that I'm not a horror buff. I mean, I'll watch the latest blockbuster, but I'm not a horror buff or a fan man. I viewed Madison Square Garden as an entertainment proposition. And so that gave me a completely different view of it than the horror guy, let's say. And so when I did The Mummy, I had this set after that year, and then I pitched Dreamworld actually in Australia in July, and I sort of picked something that was non-Halloween, non-nighttime, everything that was almost counterintuitive to what we'd created in New York. I thought, you know what, I reckon we got something that people will enjoy any time of the day or night and all year, and it's kind of like going on a ghost train, but doing it at a Broadway level. And so we toured The Mummy Returns, I think it was, to Dreamworld, and it was an instant success. It was in the June-July school holidays of either 2000 or 2001, and it was an instant success. People loved it. It was all during the daytime. So, and it was this action-adventure experience. We were just applying, I guess, the scare paradigm as the tactic to create an emotional response. Mm-hmm. So then that sort of set us upon a journey of looking at Hollywood brands to see what could travel. So we did all the Mummy movies with Universal, and even the last one, The Mummy 3, which was the Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, and we built, the Chinese Warriors of Xi'an. We've done Van Helsing. I recorded Hugh Jackman on Broadway for that, which was cool. We did Prison Break Live, which we toured in Australia. Terminator, we still have the rights, and there's a new Terminator movie coming out, I think, in 2015. We just did The Maze Runner, with Fox, with the blockbuster opening of that. We did World War Z, did Night at the Museum, Alien vs. Predator. So, and then we did Ice Age Live. I created, again, talk about the strength of an idea. I, sitting in the offices in Los Angeles with Fox and said, someone should do Ice Age Live, and Ice Age on Ice, I think I said. And then one of those ideas when everyone's an expert after, good idea has many fathers. So, and even the chairman of Fox, had a big to-do in LA. Said, "Oh, gee, I wonder who thought of that." It was kind of funny because we were sitting there and going, "Well, I did." And then, we raised the money out of Amsterdam, and that's touring now, and we get a royalty from that, which is great. And that's touring the world with Stage Entertainment out of Amsterdam, and. So yeah, I mean, a good idea, when it finds the right partner or the right person or the right money, gets a chance to, live life. And my theory is, I've always considered it to be a privilege if someone gives you money to create something. Whether it be for $1, $100, $1,000, or $1 million, it doesn't matter. If someone gives you something and you've got to create something, then you do your best possible job with what your resources are. And as I said, to your point, we just did the Maze Runner Adventure Live, with the blockbuster movie to launch it, and So, we'll look to Hollywood in the future, but we also do our original stuff. I mean, Dreamworld right now has our Kevil Hill Zombie Evolution that's in there for 4 years that I wrote, and is an original story and an original attraction. So we'll still continue to mix it up with both original and Hollywood brands.
So in essence, the ideas just keep coming, don't they?
Well, as long as you're not brain dead, then obviously in my case, the knees can get sore and whatever. But as long as my brain works, my problem is I have too many. So as you get older, you've got to figure out, all right, which ones are you really passionate about? I mean, there's ideas that we'll come up with that keep us in business. But then there's ideas that I have that I really want to do because I'm passionate about them. I mean, I'm passionate about anything we do, but I qualify in that, if I had my last, bit of money and I wanted to create something, what would I create is probably different than what I need to create some days. So
yeah.
you have to. I guess counterbalance those things. So that's what I have to do.
Is there some sort of process or structure that you've got in place, either through a plan or your own thinking, that helps you to define what's most important? Is it simply that emotional response that you mentioned before? The things that you're really passionate about and you want to do, as opposed to those things that make smart commercial sense or business sense to do.
Well, even the ideas that I'm passionate about, I think, are commercially viable. But
Sure.
I've never really been the altruistic promoter or producer, even though. My own litmus test is very kind of commercial, I would say. That said, there would be some, projects that I would like to do that might just be for fun. But and I mentor some people, on that basis. But in terms of the ideas, I think you try and leverage whatever you're doing to the next one. I mean, we've got a long list of credits, very strategically over the last decade or so. I've tried to build the brand sort of portfolio that we've got under our belt, both from Hollywood original and then also the global locations. So when I look at our asset base, intellectually, it has been our ability to say yes to projects in far-flung places, and also create an experience out of a brand that someone else mightn't have been able to see. And I just did this with Maze Runner. It's a really challenging situation. Not the least was the fact that we couldn't let the audience run when the movie's called The Maze Runner, and I had to create an experience where the audience couldn't run, and so it was very, very funny. But yes, I have projects that I really, really love to do before I move on to wherever it is you go, and and that if someone gave me a blank check, I'd do tomorrow. So.
Yeah. And again, I mean, it comes back to something you said before. You touched on with Branson. You say yes and then work out how, and that's very much been an underlying theme or driving motto, if you like, of the growth that you've experienced and enjoyed along the way, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, particularly, listen, we took our product that we became known for, and was it the journey that I predicted? No, but it was the one that was able to be leveraged. And so we have literally been on 4 continents. I mean, we've produced now in China and Europe, Australia, Asia, England, obviously, in the United States, and some of the biggest cities and some in complex places, far-flung places as well. Because what was interesting about the scare stuff that we did, the theatrically, was that it was non-lingual. And even though I did a show that ran for 6 years at Warwick Castle in England that was very scripted, that, people's emotions and laughing, crying, scaring, whatever, fear is one of your primal emotions. So we've been able to tap into that, and then package it. We've made it broader by packaging it into adventures and what have you, because at the end of the day, even with technology, Cirque du Soleil is the biggest live entertainment company in the world. I think they are now, and yet they took ultimately one of the oldest forms of live theatre, the circus, and just repackaged it. And they just did a brilliant job of it, So no matter where technology goes, people are still going to be human. And, they're still going to crave tactile experiences.
And I'm really glad you said that. And I think thinking of Cirque du Soleil there, when that quote you said before, a good idea has many fathers, which I've never heard before. That's...
Well, a good idea has many fathers, and a failure is an orphan, So.
Yeah, absolutely. The point you made there about emotion is really critical, because I think of, when I think of those visionary leaders or visionary businessmen, which is very much yourself. Those people and you in particular, what I've been able to do is really fire up that emotional response in people. Do you think has that been something that you've always deliberately worked towards, or is it something that you've just sort of noticed being a really good good trigger in the process?
I think at various stages in your life you figure out what you're good at, what you're not good at, why things happen, why you're able to do things, and for most of your life, or certainly many parts of your life, you're not really sure why you were doing it or good at it. But if I look back at my days at the surf club in Australia, at Moana, or at the footy club or whatever, and I always tell people one of the great things of Australian life is the egalitarian nature of the sports club, even though people have been bemoaning committee life for years. It's always the same people on the committee that do the same jobs. However, for the most part, when you go away from the committee, for example, it's a very egalitarian culture in the Australian sporting club system. So the surf club, the footy club, you're rubbing shoulders, at a very young age, usually with, your peers and, with all sorts of people in the community. Yeah. So it's a very formulative, very positive formulative experience in Australia growing up, and I think that certainly gave me a way of thinking, particularly in the US and then globally, that that listen, no one's better than anyone else, and someone else has an idea, great, and you just you look back and you go, all right, well, yeah, I was on the committee and making change and being disruptive, because I was disruptive at school when you look back at the report, but I was really good at sport and drama, so it's no coincidence that my career was in sport and drama, so but at the time I was just a nuisance, so and disruptive.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And as you said, linking those two together, Madison Square Garden, home of the New York Knicks, and many other, and the Rangers. And just as a little aside, when you mentioned at the start that selling 250,000 tickets puts you in some pretty lofty company, I can think of 3 bands who would have done similar. Well, who may have only been in that, and I think one was Springsteen.
You got Springsteen, Elton John, Billy Joel, U2, some pretty big players.
Absolutely. But that disruption, isn't it, that you talk about it? It's when it's harnessed for good, the results can be pretty spectacular.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is not to dwell. You look back and you go, hey, that was great. I'm still friends with people that I employed. I gave actors their first job, in that show, other shows, and you know, one of the other people that we discovered in New York was Chris Angel, you know, who became hugely successful. And I remember at the time in New York, you know, I was the one that had the show at Madison Square Garden, and he was trying, you know, to get a lift, and you know, a meeting was made, and we put him in, and we gave him a break, and then years later I did E! True Hollywood Story for him, for his journey. So it was kind of funny, and yeah, you know, you just don't know where it's going to intersect, intertwine. How many days in the sun you get, or if every day is a day in the sun, good or bad, is the way you look at it. And, you know, look at it from your own perspective to say, you know, what's been fun, what's not, what else do you want to do while you're here? And, you know, it's pretty simple. And it's also very important for people to understand that, you know, you make choices with whatever you do, obviously. So, you know, I've got friends that are married and got kids, and I have not had children, and so that is something that I'm, you know, I'm not regretful of. I mean, I would like them, and I'm surprised that I don't have them, and I don't have a, you know, an immediate, you know, family situation like that. So someone will go to me like, you know, a friend will go, oh, you know, you just had an amazing life. I said, well, you had an amazing life. You got 3 kids, you know. I said, so. You know, it's very important to have a handle on stuff, you know, and just go, you know what you think is amazing and I think is amazing are 2 different things, you know. So, you know, it's the grass is always greener, the acres of diamonds. You know, it's very, very important to just love what you do and do what you love.
Yeah, and I think you know, in those last few comments of yours, it's just such a great example of, well, number one, I think your humility, in spite of or despite of all the success that you had, incredibly level-headed, still very well connected with you know, with friends and family, and I guess, you know, the as you said there, you know, appreciating that everyone experiences some form of success in their life, and often it's the very things that are you know, right under our nose, and so remaining humble, remaining grounded.
I'm back on. I'm still here.
Linda, we're back on there.
Yeah, sorry.
My apologies. Yeah, I was just saying, just your ability to remain so humble, with all of that, you know, global growth and global success, I think is a real testament to your own character.
Well, I think, you know, listen, whatever we do is, I got things pretty, I think, in reasonable perspective. I was adopted, so I've always been very grateful that I got given a home in the very basics of life. So, um, starting from that point, then everything is a bonus.
Mm.
And quite frankly, it's really what I believe. Everything is a bonus from that point. And I quite often I walk every day, and I'll go past. I'm in Malaysia right now, and I'll walk past people who are construction workers, and there's a bunch of Bangladeshi workers here in Malaysia, and I would imagine some are fairly lowly paid. And there's this woman on the journey here. There's like a bloke in Mexico that I always walk past, and they just got these simple jobs, and I always walk past. I'll smile and wave, and then after a few days, they sort of look forward to you walking, and
Mm.
and it's your sort of connection with these people or anyone, realizing that that's their life, that's their journey, um, and your journeys of crossing in that particular moment on that street on that day, maybe every day for a while, whatever. But you know, everyone is needed, in the ecosystem, if you will, and so that's the way I kind of view it. People do some amazing things on the planet. I don't. I just attend. And I mean, I love entertaining people. I mean, and I know when we talk to our actors, I make sure when they go through rehearsals, I'll say, and you mentioned the Adelaide show. I mean, we tried the show circuit. It was a very unforgiving. We won 4 Best Attraction awards, but it's a very unforgiving environment, particularly when it rains. So we sort of gave up on that. But I remember I seeing kids and parents or anyone buying a ticket, and I'll say to our actors, I'll say, your contract is with that kid. The kid might have saved his pocket money, to come along to that experience. We
Yeah.
just did this with Maze Runner, and I said, the little kid is going to see the movie or might see the movie, or the teenager, without their parents, they're coming along, they're spending their money, and it's your contract. Is with not with me, it's with the kid. It's with the audience. It's to say, give them a good time. We're not doing rocket. We're not saving the earth. What we're trying to do is give someone a moment of engagement that's exciting, that's relieving, that's special, that's memorable, that's talkable, that's whatever. And really, it's as simple as that, because we all have our place. Mine happens to be in entertainment, and in particular with live entertainment and immersive entertainment. So my contract is with the actor and the audience to create this ensemble, if you will, and this mismatch that all comes together and collides and creates a moment where all parties are happy. And on the scary stuff we do is funny, because quite often someone will get upset, or when I say upset, it'll end in tears, or they'll be visibly upset because we've scared them. And I've always reporters have asked me, or people have asked me, "They get upset." I said, "No." I said, "By the time that kid gets home, they'll be the bravest kid in town. They would have, you've created a shared experience in a fractured world, and that puts me in a group of people that love what they do to create a shared experience for a family, or whatever, boyfriend and girlfriend, boyfriend and boyfriend. It doesn't really matter, but a group of people that have come together, and you've created that moment for them that could last a lifetime."
And that's really the heart of the vision, isn't it? If it almost on that particular commentary there, it almost goes full circle back to the start, which is that's the power of a compelling vision, isn't it? Is that it creates a shared experience and a connection with and through people who may or may not have otherwise been involved in it.
Well, that's right. The only difference between technology and what I'm doing is that we're doing it very old school, without technology per se. It's human interaction, and it's just a shared experience. And then if you all win, in that contract, you all go away, feeling quite happy and chuffed with yourself. I know that our Maze Runner cast just finished, and they were posting online in our little group, going, "Oh, I miss it already," and that cast will never be together again. That is done. It finished. It created a moment in everyone's life and time, and we all go through these things together and come out the other side, and hopefully, our little world we've created something special for someone on the planet somewhere. And right now we just did a 6-week or whatever show here in Malaysia. We created another shared experience, for a bunch of people who otherwise wouldn't have had a shared experience.
Yeah.
In that particular realm,
Yeah, absolutely. So, what would be the message that you have for new and emerging leaders in business? That's the majority of people that are going to be listening to this, based on your life's experiences, the powerful belief that you've got in creating that, or starting with an idea, creating that vision. What's the message you've got for those people starting out in their careers?
Oh, I think it's, you just got to believe in yourself, obviously, in your product, whatever that product or vision is, and whether it is in fact a widget or something compelling or interesting or whatever to you, and just know that everything. I have this sort of innate ability to remind myself that everything always started somewhere. So, someone at some point in the history of time and Earth and in the future of time and Earth will always start something. And, a new idea is really usually the hybrid of a bunch of old ideas, or in fact it's a belief in a reinterpretation, whatever, that you just get up and you go, all right, well, let me look at that differently. Let me see if people like that, and depending on what your criteria is for success. Mine is I want people to enjoy what we create, and that hopefully, we'll get a commercial reward from an idea, but the idea to me is the most valuable asset. It's the one that causes me the most grief, the most excitement. It's like giving birth. And the poet in me will say, back to my logo, and our logo, as you know, is that I produce what my heart can see. So I start internally, and then go, oh, wow, that'd be cool, and then just try and make it something memorable. But from a leadership point of view, when you're trying to drag people along in that frustrating journey of trying to get other people to see your vision, is just remember sometimes that if you can't seem to get it through, then perhaps you've just got to illustrate it a little bit better. Or if you're a disruptor like myself, disrupt and bugger the consequences. You got to really. It's like all the cliches are there for a reason, right? You can listen to all the cliches, but there's a hell of a lot of fun in creating one too.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes shock and awe is a reasonably good way to get your message across as well.
Yeah, well, and just as long as you do the best to be honest and truthful, and not try and be deceitful, or rip anybody off in that contract. Do the best you can, and just try and create good.
Yeah, and I love that, because I think it comes back to one of the very hearts, which is, if you can do something that's good for you, good for others, and good for the greater good, the chances of that playing out in a really fun and positive way, skyrocket. And I think that's been pretty clear for all of us listening. Certainly has been for me. Being able to speak with you is that that's exactly the way you've gone about your business from the time at the Moana Surf Club down in the southern suburbs or the southern coastal suburbs of Adelaide here, all the way to New York City, to Hollywood, and the other continents, where you've been able to entertain people. As you said, it's about making them feel good.
Yeah, it is very important, and not to take yourself too seriously. I remember I had an argument, with a guy in Hollywood a couple of years ago. We were dealing with a major brand and a major studio, and I remember we we had an argument, and my mom was sick at the time, and I remember going, dude, it's just a cartoon, and like, get over yourself, and really, even in LA or New York or whatever, it should be the experience that's the exciting part, not, all the, the stupid stuff, because none of us are here forever, so like, you can either try and do good or be an ass. And I remember the other thing that really sticks in my mind in New York was a mate of mine. I had a few mates over that came to the opening of Madison Square Garden, and the opening night we had a line around a block. This is the very first year, and I was out on 7th Avenue in New York, in front of the Garden, under the marquee, names on the marquee, all very, very exciting, and I was crying. And I'm not afraid to admit that. I was crying. My mate came up to me, he said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "My dad isn't here." And he said, "Oh yeah, but he's looking down." I said, "You know what, Paul," I said, "that's a cliche that it's just not going to cut it right now. I really wish my dad was here, like physically here, to see this, to feel this, to live this." And, they're your moments. All of us have them, whether it be getting married, having a child, putting a show on, doing whatever. We all want to sort of either be thankful, say thank you. And for me, it was always about saying thank you to my parents for, picking me up in the hospital versus the kid next to me. So, to be able to, share those moments in your life with your family or your friends, people that are special, is what it boils down to. And then in our particular case, we're able to create product, hopefully, that goes another step further, where you're creating a product that can have quite a tactile and an emotional experience for someone else.
Yeah, and I think that brings it to such a wonderful point in the conversation, where what I took out of that is that the vision, the power comes from the head, the heart, and the gut. You feel it, you sense it, you love it, and you think about it. And one of the great joys is having the opportunity to share it with people who are really close to us. In a business sense, obviously that can be colleagues and clients and the likes. And on a personal setting, it's about being able to share that with the people, or enjoy it with the people who are very, very close to us. And as you said, on that particular occasion, you weren't able to do that with your dad, and yet it was still such a beautiful moment to be able to pause and reflect and remember. In that case, who were the people that really shaped you and set you on the course that you chose to walk, and I just think that's a really great reminder, as you said, of what's really important when you look at it all.
Yeah, and it's again, you're here for a short time. I've ended up on a career path that suits me well in terms of the things that I love and get passionate about, and I've always been one to accept growth and change, which is, and your flaws. So if the other thing is to be very mindful of what you're not good at as well, which is a very important lesson in life, is to try and identify what you're not good at, or if you're really bad at something, and whether you either get someone else to do it, or if it's a character flaw, then fix it, or grow from it, and always try and become a better person, and a better man, a better woman, whatever, in the gender thing, but just a better person. And are you going to leave, was the world a better place because you were in it? But did you contribute? Did you give? What did you do? Did you just take? I'd like to think that, at the end of my time, I gave something. Was it world-shattering? No. Was it entertaining? Hopefully. And did it touch a bunch of people in a bunch of places? Absolutely. And so, in my little world and my little contribution, if you have a little contribution but it affects someone else's life, then it's like parenting, right? You're bringing up children. Your parents share something with you. You share something with them. It's a contract. And my children have been worldly.
Yeah. Look, and I think the fact that you and I are having this conversation right now that people are going to enjoy is testament to how, as you said before, how little moments can shape things. The way we met was chance. The way we kept in contact was small, and yet the fact that you've given up an hour of your time, squeezed it into an incredibly busy schedule from Malaysia, I think just goes an incredibly long way to backing up what you said there about do you contribute? Do you not only enjoy the growth for yourself, but contribute to other people's growth? And for me personally, I just feel incredibly privileged that that people are going to be able to listen to this call and over again, because I just think you've hit the nail on the head on more than one occasion about understanding those real reasons why we set about doing things, and that really is creating the vision for our own lives, and then working diligently and disciplined to make that happen, and to create opportunities for other people to do the same.
Yeah, thank you, Dean. It's a pleasure. And again, the course is giving. It comes back to you get much more enjoyment out of giving. Sometimes it can be frustrating, but if you give and just Paul Meyer, one of the great speakers that I'd ever heard, used to say, if you give, you'll just keep filling up. It's like a reservoir that never ends. You just keep giving, and the reservoir will replenish.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the funnel can hold plenty. You just keep pouring it in, and I think that's a great lesson for everyone, which is givers gain. So you keep on giving.
Well, and I give to you, and hopefully your listeners that you can, and like anyone on the planet, you start from anywhere. Wherever you grow up is irrelevant. It just doesn't matter. But if you're true to your journey, then and your hopes and dreams and what have you, and realize that some will turn out, some won't. You reconcile with them and move on. Don't dwell on the ones that didn't, or the ones that you couldn't control, and even the ones you could control. Just have another crack, do something else, wake up again, have another dream, and start again.
And I think on that note, that we couldn't leave the call in any better shape than that. As you're exactly right, you wake up, have another crack, have another dream, and just keep going. So with that as the legacy that people can take out of this call, along with so many others. I mean, I couldn't encourage people more to to go back and listen to this again and again and again and again. There was just so many gold nuggets, and I remember from our first coffee conversation, that was your thing. You said, out of every conversation, you've got to take you've got to take the gold nugget. Look for the nugget in the information.
The kernel of value, as my Harvard professor used to say. The kernel of value.
The kernel of value. There's more than one in this call. So to the listeners, I'd really encourage you to go back and listen to it again and again and again. And from me to you, Linton, I honestly cannot thank you enough for you sharing your time and your insights and experiences with us tonight. What an outstanding journey to have created over that last time, and particularly as you thank you for going all the way back to your beginnings and laying it out for us very clearly that it doesn't matter where you come from, it's who you become on that journey that really matters, and how you contribute to others, and I just think that.
Well, thank you for thinking that I would have some value, a kernel of values for your listeners. It's it's a humbling experience and one that I'm pleased to share. And if you share one good idea, or one spark or whatever, I like to, for myself, I call it the creative apocalypse. It's a moment where it just goes bang, and then hopefully, someone out there just says, "Damn it, I can quit my job, or I can do whatever and just have a crack, and what's the worst that can happen?" Honestly, really.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's certainly inspiration that I'll be taking out of this. So once again, Linton, just thank you so much.
My pleasure
for participating, and really trust that for the listeners, this is going to be something that is going to make you think about the successes both now and in the future that they can all enjoy. So Linton, thank you so much.
My pleasure, Dean. Thanks a lot, mate.
Bye for now.